In this Art of Deer Hunting video, we're going to be talking about all things wind direction, wind speeds, and thermals, how that can come into play on shooting big bucks and outsmarting their nose. First things first, we're always trying to play the wind that's best for us and to where a deer can't smell us. Sometimes you can really play the edge to where a deer thinks he has the wind with him, which means he's walking with the wind, but you're not set up in a place where he can walk directly downwind of you to access a location. So that's kind of a crosswind where we play our scent cone just off the trail the buck's walking in with the wind, or in most cases we actually want to play the wind in a direct opposite direction of where general deer activity and the buck travel is going to happen, where our shot opportunities are. So those are just some high level thoughts. As far as wind speeds, a good 10+ mile an hour wind is going to keep things consistent. Anything under 10, 5 to 10 is a pretty good sweet spot. Keeps your scent flowing in one direction fairly well until, that last half hour, or sometimes the first half hour light when the thermals kick in. Anything under 5 is very difficult because thermals can overtake a 5 mile an hour wind, or a 1-2 mile an hour wind, or calm days. They can take your scent pretty much anywhere. That's where your understanding of thermals and how things heat up when the sun hits a hillside or a water source, where that scent is going to be taken in the mornings versus the evenings. That's a whole different ball game. But for the most part, if you can find the 10+ mile an hour wind, that's going to keep your scent consistent, that scent cone where that's traveling. On top of this, we have extremely good scent control with the phase system. So even when deer get downwind, we feel really good about our opportunities, getting away with deer not smelling us as humans, but we always play the wind. That is the number one thing. We're always playing the wind. Now, when you have wind speeds that are 10 mile an hour, 15, 20 even, that sometimes suppresses deer movement. So even though your wind is blowing in a location where deer can't smell you, and you feel really good about that, it also suppresses the deer movement to where you might not have as good of opportunities. So there's a balancing there. I think 10 is kind of that sweet spot. That 7 to 10 is kind of where I think the perfect wind speed is for deer movement and scent control. As far as thermals go, in the morning and in the evening, that's where things get a little bit tricky. Typically the wind speeds die down in the evening. That's when their thermals kick in, the sun goes down, and thermals can really contradict or offset the wind speed. So in the morning that also happens. So when the sun comes up, it's warming up that air, and your scent, or the air in general, wants to pull uphill. It's warming up the air, pulling it uphill. In the evenings, it's doing the opposite. Sun goes down, things are cooling down. Generally, your scent and your wind wants to go back downhill. So it can be a combination of, maybe say you have a 5 mile an hour wind speed, and then the thermals start to kick in, which typically could offset that 5 mile an hour wind speed. You might have a dead calm situation, or you might begin to get a swirl based on your location. But generally, if the wind speeds aren't too high in the evening, your scent will carry down to those low spots. Could be a water source down there, a cool area, kind of pulling that scent in, pulling that air down in that location. So try to figure out where you're set up, where the low spots are. If it's a calm day in the evening, generally your scent's gonna pull into that area. So just watch out for those low spots, along with how the wind is hitting the different terrain. One thing you also want to pay attention to outside of the topography and how the wind and thermals are interacting with the landscape is the type of tree you're in. If there are a lot of leaves in the tree early season, or if you're in a pine tree, something of that sort. You can also have pine rows, which block wind and really affect how things flow as well. That's a completely different ball game. I would try to understand that stand location, that hunting location, and really understand how the wind interacts with those trees before you set up and come up with your strategy. So that's kind of an outside factor. The types of trees you're in, the amount of leaf cover, and maybe if there's pine trees or cedars or spruce trees that really block or create barriers for the wind to not penetrate. Now, in general, wind speeds you can typically feel, you can typically see. If there's leaves on the trees, you can tell which direction the wind is blowing for quite some distance. Now, when things calm down and the thermals kick in, this is our phase wind floaters. You put one of these in the air and they really just float. So you can see that for hundreds of yards, depending on where the wind blows and the thermals and where it gathers. So instead of powder, which dissipates, you can't see it too far, these fibers, if you just grab a few, you can really see how they float. And they'll show you all kinds of swirls, the thermal pull versus the wind speed. Huge tool to have when you're trying to play the right wind directions, the right thermals, and watch your scent control. So always have a great wind checker like the wind floaters. And this comes into play not only for hunting strategies, but for calling, which is a big part of what we do. So calling, rattling, deer try to get downwind. Even if a deer sees you and they try to get downwind and try to figure out what you are, understanding your wind direction, your thermals, having as good a scent control as possible is always an advantage. And just trying to put all these factors into play. Wind speeds and thermals are huge, and probably one of the most important things when it comes to shooting mature bucks is understanding how they use their nose and how you can play off that to take advantage of your situation.